Welcome back to A Travel Guide to Life. I'm Anthony DeStefano. Well, we're only going to talk about two things today, but boy, oh boy, are they the cause of a lot of anxiety in people's lives: health and money. Stay tuned. In a previous program, we talked a little bit about exercise, but now it's time to focus again on health. Bear in mind that I'm not a doctor, and what I'm going to tell you is neither a weight loss plan nor a fitness program, nor is it meant to go against anything you've been told by your doctor. That's very important to understand. This is just my personal attempt to inject some common sense into the whole confused discussion of health. After all, there seems to be thousands of health books out there, and many of them are making statements that totally contradict each other. You know the kind of thing I mean. One study shows that soy protein is bad for you. Another shows that it's good for you. One expert advocates low-carb diets, another high-carb diets. One book conclusively proves that large doses of vitamin C are incredibly beneficial. Another proves that they're a waste. Again, conclusively. How do we make sense of it all? The first thing to do, I think, is to take a step back and look at the entire health picture. When you do that, you realize that there are really only four major pieces to the puzzle, only four factors that ultimately determine a person's health and longevity. Let's take them one at a time. First, there's nothing much anyone can do about his or her genetics, is there? When you were conceived in your mother's womb, you were dealt a certain genetic hand. For some people, the hand was good. For some, mixed. For some, poor. Whatever the cards you've been dealt, you're pretty much stuck with them. But being stuck with your genetics doesn't mean you can't do anything to affect your health. You can. Yes, you may have predispositions to certain diseases, but a predisposition is not the same as the disease itself. It's only a shadow of something that might be. Therefore, you can do something about it. If you know your family's medical history, you can take whatever preventative measures are available. For example, if you have diabetes in your family, you can watch your sugar intake and focus on doing lots of exercise. If you have heart disease in your family, you can try to eliminate most fatty foods from your diet. If there's cancer in your family, you can make sure that you go in for early testing. In other words, by simply being aware of your genetic predispositions, you can take some common sense actions that might prolong your life for decades. The second major factor affecting your health is your psychology, especially your stress levels. After genetics, this really is the most important thing in determining how you feel and how long you live. It's much more critical than vitamins and minerals and all those products people spend so much money on trying to stay young. Why? Because stress causes acid. Stress causes cell mutations. Stress causes toxins. Stress causes wrinkles and gray hairs. Stress causes breakdown at every level. This is a scientific fact. There's no dispute over it. It's much more important to avoid stress than it is to avoid hamburgers. Stress will cause you to have a heart attack a whole lot faster. So what should you do to avoid stress? The answer is anything and everything. Unlike your genetic makeup, this is something you can change. There are lots of free resources on stress reduction that are available to anyone with internet access or the ability to walk to a library. All you have to do is make use of them. Whether it's deep breathing exercises or relaxing music or laughter therapy or physical activity or a deep prayer life, there's something out there that can help you no matter how serious your personal problems. And don't be surprised if the simplest solutions work best. If you feel like an emotional wreck sometimes, it may just be that you're not getting enough rest. When you sleep well, you're able to handle all of life's problems better. Sleep is refreshing. Sleep is holy. The Bible talks about Christ sleeping on several occasions. Once, when he and the apostles were on a small boat and a storm was raging on the sea. The apostles were all so worried that the tiny boat was going to sink. But Christ just kept on sleeping right through it all. Talk about low stress. That's the way all of us should be. No matter how great the storm, We have to have confidence that God knows what's best. He may not stop the thunder and lightning, but He'll always see us through it. The third major health category is exercise. We've spoken about this already, and there's not much more to add to it here. If you want to live, you have to move. If you want to have energy, you have to expend energy. It's that simple. There's no need to go on any kind of radical, high-intensity fitness program. If you enjoy that kind of thing and you can do it without getting injured, fine. But it's not strictly necessary. The only thing that's essential to prevent illnesses and improve your chances of living longer is consistent, low to medium intensity aerobic exercise. Why is that the key? Because it boosts your immune system. It trains the body to burn calories faster. It makes your heart and your lungs stronger. It makes all your systems function much more efficiently. There's just no excuse not to do it. If you haven't found a way to work it into your weekly schedule, then you better figure it out soon. It's just not that difficult. If you walk or jog or cycle or swim or play tennis or do anything that gets your heart rate up for 30 to 60 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week, and you do it consistently over a period of years, you're going to be getting the maximum health benefits that exercise can offer. Sure, you can do more if you like. Your body can get used to anything, so it's not a bad idea to spice things up once in a while and vary your intensity levels. But the goal is not to beat yourself up every day. It's to be consistent. It's to be injury-free. It's to be able to exercise to the end of your days. The last health category is nutrition, and it's probably the area that needs simplifying the most. The reason is that there are a dizzying number of diets and food-based health programs on the market. Many of them have whole industries built up around them. Navigating through the maze isn't easy. There are detox diets, beauty diets, alkaline diets, anti-inflammatory diets, food-combining diets, vegan diets, low-fat diets, low-calorie diets, low-carb diets, non-dairy diets, non-gluten diets. The list is just endless. But can I tell you something very interesting? All of these diets have one thing in common. No matter what the nutritional philosophy behind them, they all agree on the importance of eating one very specific kind of food. Can you guess what that food is? Vegetables. Good old vegetables. That's the one universal and unifying constant amid all the crazy confusion. Vegetables truly are the superfood of the world. When it comes to nutrition, they literally do everything. They provide water and oxygen to your cells. They make the body more alkaline and less acidic. They decrease chronic inflammation. They're chock full of antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals, and they're generally high in fiber, low in calories, and easy to digest. Do you know that if you did nothing else but eat a large vegetable salad along with your lunch and your dinner every single day for the rest of your life, you'd be farther along than 90% of the general population when it comes to nutritional health? It's true. And you probably wouldn't have to read another health book for the rest of your life. That simplifies the subject of nutrition quite a bit, doesn't it? And I'll make things even simpler. Along with eating lots of vegetables, there's one other sensible rule to follow. In fact, it's probably the most important dietary discipline you can ever master. It's called moderation. And it simply means limiting the kinds and the quantities of food you eat. Listen, we all know the foods that are bad for us. We've all heard them repeated ad nauseum. We know that consuming too much sugar and salt and caffeine and red meat and processed foods and fast foods can be very harmful to us. And yet, we can't seem to stop. So shouldn't the solution be obvious? Shouldn't the solution be that if we can't stop eating them, we at least cut down on them? Isn't that logical? Isn't that at least a good intermediary step? Well, that's what moderation is all about, cutting down. The truth is, as long as you don't overeat a particular food, there's no reason to stress over it. Sure, a hamburger isn't necessarily the best thing for you. And if you stop for lunch every day at a different fast food restaurant, your arteries are going to be clogged in a very short time. But if you do it every once in a while, it's just not going to kill you, despite what the health police tell you. Or take a more personal example. I'm Italian, and I love Italian food. If you put me on one of those low-carb diets and you said that I could never have pasta again, I'd probably fall to my knees and cry out in agony. After all, what's the point of living in a world without rigatoni. But if instead you ask me to cut down on my pasta, maybe even significantly, and perhaps supplement it occasionally with some of that omega-3 enriched whole wheat pasta, then at least there's a chance I'd listen to you. You see what I'm trying to get at? The goal is to limit, not eliminate. What we're aiming for here is long-term consistency. And when it comes to your diet, the key to that is moderation. So, to summarize, here's what I personally believe to be a sensible and practical approach to health. Genetics. Know your family history and be aware of any predispositions you may have to any diseases so you can take preventative action. Psychology, stress. Do research to find a stress reduction method that works for you. Exercise. Do low to medium intensity aerobic work for 30 to 60 minutes, 3 to 4 days a week. Nutrition. Learn moderation in everything. Except veggies. Eat truckloads of those. I want to repeat that I'm not a doctor. I don't have any medical degrees, but I do have something called common sense. And I've spent an enormous amount of time studying this subject. I'm confident that if you follow these tried and true guidelines over the course of several years, you'll be safeguarding your health in an extremely proactive and effective way. And yet, you won't be making the spiritual mistake of turning your health into some kind of religious idol. You'll be keeping it in proper perspective. And proper perspective is what this program is all about. Money, money, money. I just said that even though I'm not a doctor, that wasn't going to stop me from dispensing health advice. Well, the fact that I'm not a financial planner isn't going to stop me from giving you advice about money either. Believe me, I'd rather not talk about finances. I'd rather keep things on a more spiritual plane. But this mini-series is meant to give you a whole program for living. And too many people experience anxiety over this subject for us to ignore it. Too many people feel that their lives are being ruined because they don't have enough money. So what I want to do is attempt to put this subject in perspective, spiritual perspective, and then lay out in very general terms what I believe to be a common sense approach to dealing with finances and financial problems. Regarding perspective, once again, there are two extremes to be avoided. One is the belief that having a lot of money is always a good thing. The other is the belief that having a lot of money is always a bad thing. Neither of these is true. Neither is taught by Christianity. First, let's look at the myth that wealth is always wonderful. You hear this all the time from personal development experts. Oh, how they love to talk about money and the glories of wealth. How incredible it would be if people just lost their guilt about having money and concentrated on acquiring as much of it as possible so they could finally live freer, more powerful lives. Some Christian leaders say the same thing. Night and day, they preach about the gospel of prosperity. You've seen them. They bounce around the stage in designer suits with their Rolex watches and gold cufflinks glittering in the lights. Everyone can be a billionaire, they shout. Everyone should be a billionaire. After all, God's riches are abundant, aren't they? And He wants everyone to share in them. All you have to do is have a little faith and come and get it. Do I hear an amen? Right? Then you have the opposite camp. Those who preach the gospel of poverty. These somber, sullen, unsmiling folks, puritanical to the core, truly believe that money is the root of all evil and that everyone who has it is basically on the road to fiery perdition. They point to certain lines in Scripture that warn against riches, take them out of context, and without reference to other teachings, twist their meaning. They end up glorifying not only the poor, but the state of being poor. They view wealth itself as a vice, so much so that they get uncomfortable anytime anyone gives them an expensive gift or takes them to a nice restaurant. After all, how could they possibly enjoy such nice things when people are starving in Ethiopia? Of course, the truth about money is more nuanced than either extreme. When you read through the Bible, for instance, you see lots of rich people, kings and noblemen and statesmen, all of them following God's will. You see that in the history of Christianity, too, and in the history of the world itself. Rich people who somehow have managed to remain humble and use their God-given wealth to accomplish great good. On the other hand, we all know there have been evil rich people, too, a lot of them. And when they've been bad, they've been very, very bad. And this is where the Bible really makes for terrifying reading, especially if you happen to be wealthy. Because one thing that stands out clearly in Scripture is the danger of having riches. Christ talked about it all the time. Many who are first will be last, he said. No one can serve two masters, God and money. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and then suffers the loss of his soul? And most famously, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. The real and ever-present danger that comes with having money is something the personal development folks always miss. In their eagerness to teach people to excel and achieve, they forget to put up the necessary red flags regarding wealth. And those red flags are necessary. G.K. Chesterton once quipped, "To be clever enough to make $1 billion, you must first be stupid enough to want $1 billion." The reason he said that was because he knew the spiritual risks inherent in great wealth. He knew that money has the power to separate us from God in a way that few other things in life can. Money can give us a feeling of false invincibility. It can make us think that we have everything we need in order to be happy and that we don't have to rely on anyone or anything, including God. It gives us a false sense of superiority, too. False because while we may be savvier than other people when it comes to worldly matters, we're not more valuable in God's eyes. That homeless drug addict on the street may very well make it into heaven before we do, and he may have a higher, more glorious place in paradise than us. So for all these reasons and more, you won't be hearing me preach any sermons on the gospel of prosperity. I simply don't know whether making a fortune would be a good or a bad thing for any particular person's immortal soul. That's really a spiritual matter between you and God. Only He knows what's best for you in light of eternity. But there is one thing I know for sure, and that's that God doesn't want you to have anxiety over money. He doesn't want you to have all the joy and enthusiasm sucked out of your life because of overdue bills. He doesn't want you to be spending the precious little time you have on this planet stressing over little green pieces of paper. The truth is, I don't know if you're destined to ever become rich, but I do know that you have the ability to solve all your financial problems and eliminate all your fears about money. God Himself has given you that ability, and God Himself wants to help you. All you have to do is muster the courage to take action, starting now. How do you do that? Here are 4 common sense steps you can follow if money has become a source of anxiety for you. You've got to make a decision. You need to stop and say, I've had enough. It's not going to be this way anymore. I'm going to change things. And even more importantly, you have to decide that you're not going to blame anyone for your problems. From now on, you're going to take full responsibility for your finances. So many people just blame, blame, blame. They love playing the victim. It's the boss's fault. It's the wife's fault. It's the husband's fault. It's the kid's fault. It's the world's fault. Sorry, with all due respect, it's your fault. I know you're probably a good person and you probably don't spend much money on yourself. And maybe you work hard and the economy is bad and there are other factors beyond your control that have influenced your circumstances. I know. But even if all that is true, you're never going to solve your problems if you don't have the attitude that your finances are under your control and nobody else's. You're going to be trapped forever unless you drop all that woe is me nonsense. You're in charge of managing your money. You're in charge of getting out of the hole if you're in one. It's up to you. You have to make a decision. No more playing the victim. No more excuses. You've got to get your money problems out into the open, out of the piles of unopened bills, out of the dark recesses of your mind, out into the light, no matter how painful that might be. So many people have no idea what their real financial situation is. Not a clue. If you ask them, they couldn't tell you what their monthly expenses are or even what their real income is after taxes. And I'm not just talking about lower and middle income people. I'm talking about the wealthy. I'm talking about millionaires who don't really understand their own finances. Oh, they may make a lot of money, but they have no idea where it all goes or why they can't seem to save more or why they always seem to be on the brink of disaster. They have accountants and lawyers and bookkeepers and all kinds of high-priced consultants, but they don't personally understand where they stand when it comes to their own money. Listen, the only solution is to write everything down yourself. all of it, all your income, all your expenses, not just bills, but food and gas and nail appointments and everything you think you need to survive. You've got to start as simply as possible. You've got to have your expenses in one place with the name of each written clearly, the type, the amount due, the minimum payments, the due dates, everything broken down into categories you can understand. And all of this has to be kept in a bound notebook or in a computer folder with clean, organized files. No more stray notes and paper clips and staples. No more nonsense. From now on, you need one designated place for your finances. Once you have your finances on paper or some kind of electronic file that you can look at in one glance, then you finally put yourself in a position of control. Finally, you're moving events and events aren't moving you. That's a huge advantage, and it leads to the next step. After you've written everything down, you need to take some time to really review and reflect on it. You need to carefully analyze your expenses and try to understand not only where your money is going, but why it's going there. This step is all about self-revelation. And don't be surprised if you discover a lot more about yourself than you bargained for. Understanding your finances can be a gateway to understanding all kinds of deeper psychological truths about yourself. After all, why are you in debt? What's the real reason? Is it that you just don't make enough money? Or is there another cause? Is it perhaps that you can't say no to yourself or your spouse or your kids? Do you maybe have an underlying problem with depression and the only thing that gives you any kind of joy is to go out and shop or eat or gamble? Do you have some kind of addiction that eats away at either your money or your time or saps you of the energy and confidence you need to go out and conquer the world? Or maybe it's not a deeper problem. Maybe you really are spending the barest minimum and there's just not enough money coming in. But even if that's the case, it's still important to confirm it because now you're going to find out what you're capable of as a human being. You're going to make a decision about what you need to do to solve this problem. And that may require something difficult or even heroic on your part. Maybe you need to bite the bullet and switch jobs. Maybe you need to get a second job. Maybe you need to get a job that's beneath your abilities or even your dignity. I don't know what you're supposed to do, but one thing's for sure. You're going to find out what you're made of. And that's all part of step 4. You need to come up with a plan of action. How do you clean up the mess? How do you dig yourself out of your hole? How do you move forward as fast as possible to financial freedom? Obviously, I can't lay out that plan for you here. I wish I could, but I don't know your particular circumstances, and this isn't a mini-series on finances. I can, however, tell you this. When it comes to the basics, like lowering your debt, there are plenty of terrific free resources out there. If you go online or visit a library with internet access, you can quickly find all kinds of budgeting and money management websites. They teach you things like the snowball technique, where you pay off your lowest credit card bill first and then use the monthly savings to help pay off the next lowest bill and the next lowest, and so on, until the momentum builds just like a snowball. That may sound simplistic, but it works. And there are other effective methods just like it. Once you manage to reduce your debt, or at least get to the point where you're not living from paycheck to paycheck, then you can really work at achieving financial freedom. And here's where things get even less confusing, because all the finance books and websites basically teach the same thing. They all say that you have to come up with a written budget and stick to it, no matter how difficult it is. They all say that within that written budget, you have to create 5 or 6 different buckets in which you divide your income. They all say that you need a living expenses bucket, and an emergency bucket, and a retirement bucket, and a savings bucket. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, you need to have a charity bucket. God calls everyone to be generous, not just the rich. The Gospels are very clear that we're supposed to give out of our need and not just out of our abundance. I wrote a book a few years ago called 10 Prayers God Always Says Yes To, and in it I included a whole chapter on this subject. The simple point I made was that God will never be outdone in generosity. When he sees you being generous to others, he will always help you with your problems. Being poor is never an excuse to be stingy when it comes to charity. So to summarize, here are 4 simple steps anyone can take to begin solving their financial problems. 1, make a decision to stop being a victim. 2, write down everything so you know where you stand. 3, reflect on what you've written so you can discover the underlying causes for your financial problems. 4, come up with a plan of action. And to these, I would add one more step. 5, focus. Focus on this area until you get it right. Focus on this area no matter how painful it is. Of course it's going to be painful. Who wants to focus on paying bills? It hurts to see how much debt you're in. It hurts to realize unpleasant truths about yourself. It hurts to discipline your spending. It's so much easier to avoid thinking about the subject altogether and live in a state of denial and distraction. So many people do that. And yet, focusing on this problem is the only way to overcome it. If you seriously reviewed your finances 15 minutes a day, don't you think that by the end of the year, you'd be in better financial shape than you are now? Of course you would. And imagine if you did even more. Imagine if you included God in the equation. Imagine if you asked God every single morning to help you with your finances. Not to make you win the lottery or give you $1 million, but to give you the strength, the perseverance, and the wisdom necessary to fix your problems so that you'll never again feel the anxiety that you have now. Don't you think that the one who created the universe and put the stars and the planets in motion is smart enough to help you figure out the solution you need? Don't you think that with his assistance, you could turn things around? Listen, you don't have to be a financial genius to know that the answer is yes. I'm Anthony DeStefano, and this is A Travel Guide to Life. See you next time.